The next couple of conjunctions are but and yet. We use these conjunctions to express contrast by adding two opposite ideas or statements together. The only difference between the two is that the conjunction yet adds an element of surprise and/or unexpectedness. By using yet, we are indicating that the second statement is surprising or unexpected when we consider the information in the first statement. Let's look at some examples for the conjunction but. I wanted to go for a walk last night, but I was too tired. Katie is very rich, but her brother lives in poverty. In some sentences, but adds the idea of condition to the idea of contrast. In such sentences, the conditional sentence we use is unreal, imaginary, and hypothetical. Such conditions are contrary to the fact. With but in this use, first we give the unreal result before but, and then we express the implied condition after it. Now let's look at an example. George would travel around the world, but he doesn't have the money. As you can see, the sentence expresses the idea of condition. The first clause here is our unreal result and looks like the main clause of conditional type 2. And after but, we have the implied condition. So the sentence means George would travel around the world if he had the money. As you can see, we are expressing a condition, but because we're using the conjunction but, we're also adding the idea of contrast. Now, let's look at some examples for the conjunction yet. Remember that we use this conjunction to add an element of surprise or unexpectedness in order to show that the information after yet is surprising and unexpected. Roger played very well, yet he didn't qualify for the finals. Emily was terribly sick and tired, yet she went to work. Notice that in both sentences, the information after yet is surprising and unexpected in the light of the information we provide in the first statements. Also remember that whenever we use but and yet, we need subjects and verbs in both statements. And if we use but and yet in writing, we add a comma before them. So far, in all the examples we have seen for the coordinating conjunctions, we have put two statements, clauses, or sentences together. But we can use the same conjunctions to join more than two statements, clauses, or sentences, and there are two different ways of doing that. Sometimes we want to use the same conjunction to connect more than two sentences. In this case, we add the conjunction only once before the last sentence. Remember that in writing, all sentences are separated by a comma, and yes, we need a comma before the conjunction too. For example, Mary is watching TV, Tom is cooking, and I'm reading. But sometimes we need different conjunctions in order to connect the sentences. In such sentences, we use the conjunctions in the right positions, and in writing, we add commas before all the conjunctions. For example, I waited for my friend for 2 hours, but he didn't show up, so I left. Now, let's look at some of the common mistakes that could happen when we connect sentences by coordination. In the following examples, there is a mistake in each sentence. Pause the video and see if you can find what the mistake is, and if you can correct the mistake. This application should be used on an Android device and operates on Android. As you may have guessed, the second sentence doesn't have a subject. So in order to correct the sentence, we must add a subject. And the subject in this case could be your phone. So the correct sentence would be, this application should be used on an Android device and your phone operates on Android. Now look at the next example. Pause your video and find the mistake. I changed the toner of the photocopier and now the quality of the print much better. Here, the second sentence doesn't have a verb. You remember that we need verbs in both statements. To correct the sentence, we could add the verb is to the second statement. So the correct sentence would be, I changed the toner of the photocopier and now the quality of the print is much better. Here's another example. Again, pause your video and find the mistake. The missing car was found. The wheels and the radio were removed. You guessed right. There is no conjunction to connect the two sentences, and we are just using a comma between the sentences. This mistake is so common that it has its own name. It's called a comma splice. Notice that in many languages we can use a comma to connect sentences, but not in English. We need a conjunction in such cases in English. In our example, we're expressing the idea of contrast, so we can use the conjunction but. The correct sentence is, the missing car was found, but the wheels and the radio were removed. Now look at this example. Pause your video and see if you can find the mistake. Nancy had to leave work earlier today for she didn't feel very well. The sentence sounds correct when you listen to it, but in writing there is no comma before the conjunction for. So to correct the sentence, we need to add a comma. Nancy had to leave work earlier today, comma, for she didn't feel very well. Now look at the next incorrect sentence. Pause your video and find the mistake. The runner had won the race, yet she was happy. As you can see, we have all the necessary parts for coordination. There are subjects and verbs on both sides, there's a conjunction between the sentences, and in writing there's a comma before the conjunction. The problem here is meaning. The conjunction yet is used to express contrast, connecting opposite ideas. But we don't have opposite ideas here. What we have in this example is a reason-result relationship. The first sentence, the runner had won the race, is a reason, and the second, she was happy, is the result. The conjunction we need to use here is so. The correct sentence then is, the runner had won the race, so she was happy. Here is one more example with a mistake. Pause your video and find it. For I couldn't withdraw any money from my account, I didn't have any IDs on me. Again, we do have all the elements of coordination here. We have a conjunction, there is a comma, and there are subjects and verbs on both sides. The problem is that the conjunction is in the wrong place. Remember that we cannot start a compound sentence with a conjunction. Coordinating conjunctions are always used between two statements. So in this example, we need to put the conjunction for between our two sentences. I couldn't withdraw any money from my account, for I didn't have any IDs on me. Now, let's see the last common mistake. Again, pause your video and see if you can catch it. Peter was not at the conference, nor he was in class yesterday. Notice the conjunction we have used here is nor, and you remember that after nor we need inversion. So in our example, the verb should be used before the subject. Peter was not at the conference, nor was he in class yesterday. In this lesson, we're going to sum up and review coordination. We've learned that coordination is connecting words, phrases, clauses, and sentences in order to give them equal emphasis or importance, and the result of coordination is a compound sentence. Besides, coordination is the most common way of connecting sentences in English. We use coordinating conjunctions in this method to connect sentences. We don't have many of them in most languages, and in English, we can use a mnemonic device, the phrase fanboys, to remember all these conjunctions. Let's briefly discuss the meanings and uses of coordinating conjunctions. And nor are used to add ideas together. So and for express a reason-result relation. We use but and yet for contrast, and or expresses choices and possibilities. Finally, remember we need subjects and verbs in both sentences, even if we have the same subject. We add a comma before the conjunction in writing, and we should be careful with the meaning and use of the conjunction we're using. In the next section, we're going to look at the second method of connecting sentences in English, subordination.
Did you enjoy it? Then subscribe, like, comment and share. Thanks for joining us.